He was trained to kill her kind, but she only asked for love. The protocol breaker. The implant at the base of Lieutenant Commander Thea Novara's skull hummed quietly as she stood at attention, her spine rigid as durasteel. The subtle vibration was a constant reminder that her emotions were being carefully regulated, suppressed for the greater good of humanity and the Galactic Council. "Lieutenant Commander, your new assignment," Admiral Drayson said, sliding a holographic file across his pristine desk. Thea's pale blue eyes remained fixed forward. "Yes, sir. We've located a pocket of resistance fighters on Helios Station. Their leader, this man," a hologram flickered to life, displaying a rugged face with intense eyes, Riker Voss. "He's been distributing malfunctioning implants, encouraging citizens to feel." The way the Admiral said "feel" made it sound like a disease. According to Protocol 7, it was. Emotions had nearly destroyed humanity centuries ago during the Neural Wars. Only through the implementation of the Emotional Suppression Protocol had peace been achieved across the colonized systems. "Your mission is simple," Admiral Drayson continued. "Infiltrate, identify key members, and eliminate the resistance. Start with Voss." "Understood, sir." Thea's voice was modulated, perfectly controlled. As she turned to leave, Drayson called after her. "And Novara, your last performance evaluation showed slight irregularities in your suppression patterns. Report to medical for adjustment before departure." A flicker of something, concern. "No, impossible," passed through her mind before being immediately dampened by the implant. "Of course, Admiral." 3 days later, Thea moved through the crowded lower levels of Helios Station, her officer's uniform exchanged for civilian attire. The station hung in orbit around a dying red giant, its metal skeleton illuminated in perpetual crimson twilight. Her contact had directed her to a bar called the Broken Circuit, a known gathering place for those suspicious of council authority. The implant hummed a little louder as she entered the smoke-filled establishment, automatically countering the mild anxiety any officer might feel when surrounded by potential enemies. "What'll it be?" asked the bartender, a woman with intricate circuitry tattooed along her forearms. "Synthmead, cold." Thea took a seat at the bar, her eyes scanning the room through the reflection in the mirrored wall. And there he was. Riker Voss sat in a corner booth, deep in conversation with a thin man who kept glancing nervously toward the door. Even from this distance, Thea could see why he'd become the face of the resistance. There was an intensity to him, a presence that the standard-issue implant should have neutralized. "First time on Helios," the bartender placed the drink before her. "That obvious?" Thea allowed a small smile, calculated, practiced, just enough to appear natural without actually feeling it. "You've got that inner ring posture, too straight-backed for the lower decks." Thea made a show of slouching slightly. "Just looking for work. Heard there might be opportunities here." "Depends what kind of work." The bartender's eyes narrowed. "And who you're willing to work for." Before Thea could respond, an alarm blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights flashed, bathing the bar in crimson. "Attention all citizens," a mechanical voice announced. "Helios Station is experiencing gravitational disturbances. Please proceed to emergency shelters. This is not a drill." The bar erupted in chaos. Patrons rushed for the exit, drinks forgotten. Thea's training kicked in. She remained calm, calculating the fastest route to maintain visual contact with her target. But Voss was already gone. A violent shudder ran through the station. Thea stumbled as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Something was wrong. This wasn't part of her mission parameters. She tapped her wrist communicator. "Command, this is Novara. What's happening?" Static answered her. Then a distant explosion rocked the station, and the lights went out completely. In the darkness, Thea felt something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine surprise. Her implant buzzed angrily, working overtime to suppress the surge of adrenaline. Emergency backup lights flickered to life, casting eerie blue shadows. Most of the bar's occupants had fled, but as Thea turned to leave, a hand gripped her arm. Council Officer Riker Voss said, "It wasn't a question." Thea reacted instantly, muscle memory taking over. She twisted, breaking his hold, and in one fluid motion had him pinned against the wall, her forearm across his throat. But Voss didn't resist. Instead, he smiled. "Your implant is working too hard, Lieutenant Commander. I can hear it from here." "Riker Voss," she stated flatly, "you're under arrest for violating Protocol 7 and distributing illegal technology." "Am I?" He glanced pointedly around the abandoned bar, the emergency lights still flashing. "Seems like the Council has bigger problems right now." Another explosion, closer this time. The floor beneath them groaned. "This station is about to break apart," Voss said. "The structural integrity fields are failing. I can get you to safety, but you need to trust me." Trust a criminal. The word felt strange on her tongue. Trust someone who values human life, even an officer's. His eyes locked with hers. "Your choice, Commander. Die following protocol or live breaking it." The rational decision was clear. Survival now, complete the mission later. Thea released him and stepped back. "Lead the way." Voss took her through maintenance tunnels she was certain weren't on any official station schematic. They passed panicked citizens rushing in the opposite direction, toward emergency shelters that Voss insisted wouldn't survive what was coming. "The Council knew," he said as they climbed a narrow ladder. "They detected the solar flare hours ago but didn't upgrade the warning level. They're using it as cover." "Cover for what?" Thea asked, following him through a hatch into what appeared to be an old observation deck. "To purge the station. Too many of us have removed our implants, too many questions being asked." Voss worked at a control panel, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a small ship docked to an unauthorized airlock. "That's absurd," Thea said, but a small part of her, the part the implant couldn't quite reach, wondered if he was right. The Council wouldn't sacrifice thousands of civilians. "Wouldn't they, to maintain control?" Voss glanced at her. "How much do you really know about the neural wars, Commander? The official history has some significant omissions." Before she could respond, her implant suddenly spiked with activity. Pain lanced through her skull, sharp and unexpected. She gasped, staggering against the wall. "What's happening to me?" she managed through gritted teeth. Voss was at her side instantly. "Your implant is malfunctioning. The solar radiation, it's affecting the neural connections." The pain intensified. Thea felt something she hadn't experienced since childhood, fear, raw and unfiltered. The implant wasn't just failing, it was tearing itself apart inside her mind. Through watering eyes, she saw Voss rummaging through a medical kit. "I can help," he said, "but you need to let me." Another explosion rocked the station. Warnings blared about catastrophic hull breaches in multiple sectors. "Do it," she whispered. Voss pressed a small device to the base of her skull. "This will neutralize the implant temporarily. It won't remove it. That's a much more complicated procedure, but it will stop the damage." A cool sensation spread through her head and the pain receded. But in its place came something else, a flood of sensations she'd been protected from for years. Fear, relief, confusion all washing over her in waves. "We need to go, now." Voss helped her to her feet and guided her toward the ship. As they strapped in and the small vessel detached from the dying station, Thea watched through the viewport as Helios began to break apart, illuminated by the angry red star it orbited. "All those people," she whispered and felt moisture on her cheeks. Tears, she was crying. "The evacuation shuttles got many out," Voss said softly. "My people have been preparing for weeks. We knew something was coming." "How?" Thea asked, turning to him. "Because we intercepted this." He handed her a data chip. Council Directive 1547, authorization for the controlled decommissioning of Helios Station due to irreparable emotional contamination of the population. With trembling fingers, Thea inserted the chip into the ship's reader. The Admiral's voice filled the cabin. Must be contained before it spreads. The failure rate of the implants is increasing with each generation. Helios Station has become a liability we can no longer afford. The solar event provides perfect cover for a regrettable accident. Thea stared at the console in disbelief. Everything she'd been taught, everything she'd enforced and fought for, was it all built on lies? "Where are we going?" she asked finally, her voice unfamiliar to her own ears, colored now with emotion she'd been denied for so long. "Somewhere safe," Riker answered, plotting a course away from Council space. "Somewhere you can learn what it means to be human again." As the ship accelerated to jump velocity, Lieutenant Commander Thea Novara felt the first stirrings of something the implant had always blocked: hope. And beneath that, something else, something impossible whenever she looked at the rebel she'd been sent to kill. The man who had, instead, saved her life. And quite possibly her humanity. Rebellion of the heart. The underground base on Nick's moon was nothing like Thea had imagined. Instead of the chaotic rebel hideout she'd expected, she found an organized community thriving in the subterranean caverns. Children played in hydroponic gardens. Engineers worked on advanced technology. Doctors tended to patients in a well-equipped medical facility. Most striking of all, everyone expressed emotions freely. "You're starring," Riker said, amusement in his voice as he guided her through the main cavern. "They're all," Thea struggled to find the word. "Human," a woman finished for her. Tall with silver-streaked dark hair and penetrating eyes, she approached with a natural authority Thea recognized immediately. "I'm Commander Lyra Voss." "Voss," Thea looked between them. "My mother," Riker explained. "Former Council Admiral, one of the first high-ranking officers to defect." Lyra studied Thea with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Another new sensation since her implant had been neutralized. "Lieutenant Commander Thea Novara," Lyra said, "your reputation precedes you, youngest officer ever to achieve your rank, perfect record enforcing Protocol 7. Her eyes softened slightly. "And daughter of Elias Novara." Thea froze. "How do you know my father's name?" "Because I served with him," Lyra replied, "before the Council decided his research was too dangerous." Thea's heart pounded in her chest, another sensation she was still getting used to. "My father died in a laboratory accident, 20 years ago." "Is that what they told you?" Lyra exchanged a look with her son. "We have much to discuss, Commander, but first, you need medical attention. That temporary neutralizer won't hold forever." Dr. Juno Mera was unlike any medical professional Thea had encountered in Council space. His lab coat was decorated with colorful patches, and he hummed as he worked, both violations that would have earned severe reprimands. "The implant is integrated with your brain stem," he explained, examining holographic scans of Thea's neural pathways. "Removing it completely would be risky, but we can permanently deactivate it." "Will I?" Thea hesitated, uncertain how to express her fear. "Will I still be me?" "You'll be more you than you've ever been," Dr. Mera replied with a gentle smile. "The emotions you're feeling now, they're just a fraction of what's been suppressed. The implant doesn't just block feelings, it dampens creativity, intuition, even certain types of memory formation." "Like memories of my father?" Thea asked quietly. Dr. Mera's expression grew serious. "Possibly. The Council is particularly thorough about erasing inconvenient personal attachments." The procedure took hours. When Thea finally emerged from the medical bay, she felt raw, exposed, as if her skin had been peeled away, leaving nerve endings vulnerable to every stimulus. Riker waited outside, leaning against the wall. "How do you feel?" Everything, she whispered. It's overwhelming. He nodded in understanding. It gets easier. Your brain is experiencing decades of suppressed emotions all at once. It needs time to calibrate. Your mother mentioned my father, Thea said. I need to know what happened to him. Come with me. The Resistance's command center was carved directly into the moon's bedrock, protected from scanning technology by natural mineral deposits. Lyra stood before a wall of screens, directing operations across multiple star systems. The Council is searching for you, she informed Thea without preamble. They've declared you compromised and eliminated in the Helios incident. Your replacement has already been assigned to hunt down surviving Resistance members. Thea should have felt betrayed, but instead, she felt oddly liberated. Tell me about my father. Lyra gestured to a secluded conference room. Inside, she activated a secure terminal. Elias Novara was a neuroscientist. He designed the original emotional suppression implants, not as permanent control devices, but as temporary treatments for trauma victims suffering from emotional dysregulation. The screen displayed an image of a younger version of Thea's father, smiling beside a prototype device. The Council weaponized his research, Lyra continued. They saw an opportunity to create a docile, obedient population. When Elias discovered how they'd perverted his work, he tried to go public. They silenced him. They killed him, Thea's voice cracked. Worse, they implanted him with a modified suppression device that erased his identity. He became a blank slate, reprogrammed to serve the Council in their deepest research facility. Lyra's expression was grave. But we have reason to believe he's still alive. The revelation hit Thea like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. The facility is called Nexus Point, Riker said. It's where they're developing the next generation of implants, ones that don't just suppress emotions but rewrite thoughts entirely. And you think my father is there? Thea asked. We know he is, Lyra replied. What we don't know is how much of Elias Novara remains in the man they now call Subject Zero. I have to find him. The words came automatically, driven by an emotion Thea was only beginning to recognize: love. That's exactly what we were hoping you'd say, Riker said with a hint of a smile. The plan took shape over the following days. As Thea's emotional responses stabilized, her tactical training proved invaluable to the Resistance. She knew Council protocols, security measures, and most importantly, she could bypass the biometric scans at Nexus Point. But the changes within her weren't just strategic. Without the implant's constant suppression, Thea found herself experiencing life in vivid detail. Food had flavor. Music stirred something deep inside her. And Riker, whenever he was near, her heart performed a peculiar acceleration that both confused and thrilled her. You're starring again, he said one evening as they reviewed facility schematics. I'm observing, she corrected, feeling heat rise to her cheeks, another new sensation. Tactically. His lips quirked upward, tactically observing what exactly? How you move, she replied honestly. It's different from Council officers, more fluid. That's because I'm not fighting against my own nature, Riker said. The implants create a constant state of internal conflict. Even with perfect suppression, the body knows something is wrong. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. Thea felt an unfamiliar tension in the air between them. We should focus on the mission, she said finally, breaking the connection. Riker nodded, but his eyes lingered on her face a moment longer. Tomorrow, then, we infiltrate Nexus Point. The Council facility orbited a neutron star, drawing power from its immense gravitational field. Their ship approached under false identification codes that Thea had provided, codes that would register them as a supply transport. Remember, Lyra said over the comm as they prepared to dock, your primary objective is to locate and extract Elias Novara. The secondary objective is to retrieve the research data on the new implants. And if we can't do both, Thea asked. Lyra's response was immediate. People before data, always. Another difference from council protocol that Thea was still adjusting to. The docking procedure went smoothly. Dressed in appropriated council uniforms, Thea and Riker moved through the corridors with practiced confidence. Thea's heart pounded, but her exterior remained calm, years of training still useful even without the implant's emotional dampening. Research level, she murmured as they entered a restricted elevator. She pressed her palm to the scanner, holding her breath. Access granted, Lieutenant Commander NOVARA, THEA. They haven't purged me from the system yet, she said with relief as the elevator descended. The benefits of being declared dead, Riker replied, checking his concealed weapon. Research level was eerily quiet. White corridors stretched in all directions, doors sealed with both biometric and code locks. Thea led them to a central terminal. Let me try to locate him, she said, fingers flying over the interface. Subject 0, there. A floor plan appeared, highlighting a secure room at the far end of the facility. No guards, Riker noted with suspicion. Why would they leave their most valuable asset unprotected? Because they don't need guards, a voice said behind them. Not when they have me. They turned to find Admiral Drayson standing in the corridor, flanked by security drones. He looked exactly as Thea remembered, perfectly composed, face a mask of cold authority. Lieutenant Commander Novara, he said, I'm disappointed but not surprised. The implant degradation was more advanced than our scans indicated. What have you done to my father? Thea demanded, emotion bleeding into her voice. Ah, so you've learned that much. Drayson seemed almost pleased. Elias Novara ceased to exist years ago. What remains is the culmination of his work, a perfect union of human intellect and technological control. You're a monster, Riker said, his hand inching toward his weapon. I'm a visionary, Drayson corrected. Emotions are an evolutionary weakness the human race can no longer afford. The neural wars proved that. The neural wars were manufactured, Thea retorted, repeating what Lyra had revealed to her. A false flag operation to justify implementing the protocol. Drayson smiled thinly. So you've been thoroughly indoctrinated by the resistance. Pity, you were one of our best. The security drones raised their weapons in unison. Take them to containment, Drayson ordered. Subject 0 will want to examine them personally. Perhaps seeing his daughter will finally trigger the emotional response we've been trying to measure. Containment was a sterile white room with observation windows on all sides. They'd been separated from their weapons, but otherwise left unrestrained. There was nowhere to run. I'm sorry, Thea said, packing the perimeter. I should have anticipated this. Drayson always plans 3 moves ahead. So do we, Riker replied calmly. Did you manage to transmit the facility layout before they caught us? Thea nodded. The data packet sent just before Drayson appeared, if your mother received it. She did, he assured her. Now we just need to stay alive long enough for the extraction team to reach us. The door slid open and a thin man in a white lab coat entered. His face was gaunt, his movements mechanical. But Thea would have recognized those eyes anywhere. They were her own. Father, she whispered. Subject 0 showed no reaction to the word. He circled them slowly, clinical gaze noting details, recording observations. Subjects display signs of emotional infection, he reported to an unseen observer. Recommend immediate implantation and reprogramming. Father, it's me, Thea, she stepped toward him. They took you from me when I was 8 years old. They told me you died in an accident. Something flickered in his eyes, confusion, perhaps. Subject appears to be attempting psychological manipulation. It's not manipulation, Riker said gently. It's the truth. Your name is Elias Novara. You designed the first emotional suppression implants to help people, not control them. Subject Zero tilted his head. Incorrect. I am Subject Zero. I serve the Council. No, Thea said firmly. You taught me to think for myself. You used to say that questions were more important than answers. She reached slowly into her boot, where a small holographic projector had escaped detection. You gave me this when I was 7. She activated it, and a small image appeared between them. A younger Elias holding a laughing child on his shoulders. Subject Zero stared at the image. His hand twitched, then rose slowly toward the projection. Impossible, he whispered, but his voice had changed, become less mechanical. This memory was erased. An alarm suddenly blared throughout the facility. The lights flickered, then switched to emergency red. That would be our extraction team, Riker said with a grin. Subject Zero, Elias, looked between them, conflict evident on his face as his programming fought against resurfacing memories. We need to go, Thea said, holding out her hand to her father. Come with us, please. A moment of hesitation, then Elias took her hand. The escape from Nexus Point was chaotic but successful. Lyra's team had created multiple diversions, overwhelming the facility's security systems. By the time they reached the extraction point, Drayson's forces were in disarray. Back on Nick's moon, Dr. Mara worked for days to deactivate Elias' implant, a much more complex version than Thea's. The process was delicate, with no guarantee of success. His mind has been under suppression for much longer, the doctor explained. The neural pathways for some emotions may be permanently damaged. But he recognized me, Thea insisted. There's still something of my father left. On the 7th day, Elias Novara opened his eyes and truly saw his daughter for the first time in 20 years. Thea, he said, voice rough with disuse but warm with recognition. My little star. The childhood nickname broke something inside her, and Thea wept openly as she embraced her father. The recovery would be long. The Council would not abandon their hunt for the defectors. But as Thea stood in the observation dome that evening, watching the distant stars, she felt no regret for the path she'd chosen. Beautiful, isn't it? Riker said, joining her. Most Council citizens never really see the stars. They look, but they don't feel the wonder. I'm feeling it now, she replied softly. He turned to face her. And what else are you feeling, Lieutenant Commander? I'm not a commander anymore, she reminded him. I'm just Thea. You were never just anything, he said, his voice dropping lower. When he kissed her, Thea understood at last what the poets had been trying to describe for millennia. That perfect moment when two hearts recognize each other across the void of space and time. In the command center below, Lyra Voss watched a classified transmission they'd intercepted from Council headquarters. Admiral Drayson's voice was cold with fury. The Novara Protocol has been compromised. Accelerate implementation phase 3. We cannot allow emotional contagion to spread. Lyra's eyes narrowed. The real war was just beginning. But for tonight, at least, as emotions bloomed like rare flowers across the resistance base, hope burned brighter than fear. And for Thea and Riker, standing beneath the endless stars, love, the most powerful emotion of all, had finally broken through.